Welcome everyone to Buffalo Art Studio. For those of you who don't know, my name is Shirley Verico and I am the curator and director of visual art. And we don't do a lot of Saturday afternoon artist talks here. One reason, we have a really vibrant education program. So we have a lot of young people down the hall. You may have saw them when you were coming in. We are open 5 days a week, Tuesday through Friday, from 11 a.m. until 5. And then on Saturdays, we're open from 10 until 2. So we do always have a nice group of people through. We were able to schedule this extra programming really because so many of you asked for it. So it has been a joy for the last 6 weeks to live with this exhibition of work by Phyllis Thompson. And when we were first programming this exhibition, Phyllis, she didn't think she had enough work. I said, Phyllis, you have enough work. She said, I don't know, maybe one gallery, 2 galleries. I don't know about an artist talk. So I said, all right, we'll make that decision after the opening. And during the opening, so many people asked to hear more about Phyllis's career, more about her process, and just more about her and the stories that are embedded in this beautiful, beautiful work. So we were able to find a good day that worked for everybody. And so we are here today. So thank you all for coming. I also have to thank our generous funders. Buffalo Art Studio is a not-for-profit, and we are able to present works like these exhibitions. We are able to have our vibrant education program, and we are able to support working artists like Phyllis with safe and affordable studio space, thanks to certainly all of you, but also to our many, many funders. So thank you to M&T Bank, the New York State Council for the Arts. I also want to thank the Warhol Foundation, which is one of our newest funders. Yay. And Miari in the front seat, who is a former colleague and just longtime friend, knows how much work went into that. I also want to thank the James and Cameron Baird Foundation, the Oshai Foundation, and Erie County. I think that was all of them. And I do want to say a special thank you because Phyllis was also the recipient of a New York State Council for the Arts Support for Artists Fund for 2023, and that was administered through the Arts Services Inc. downstairs here in this building. So it's very important we thank all of those people. Today is the last day of the exhibition. We are going to do our best when Phyllis is done talking to have our team whisk away the chairs for any of you that haven't had time to really engage with this work, so that you can do that as well. We do have some catalogs left. In fact, Sydney, do you want to grab the rest of them out of the office? I think there's a thick. You already did great. So you're welcome to take those. That's why we make them. And so Phyllis is going to talk about her work for about 30 minutes, and then if anybody has a question, we're going to have a conversation, because I think that's really the great thing about this community, that we get to have these intimate conversations. So without further ado, if anybody can't hear or can't see too, let us know. But the wonderful Phyllis Thompson, artist, educator, and we are very proud to say also studio artist, somebody that has her studio here with Buffalo Art Studio. So thank you so much, Phyllis, and it has been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you again. Thank you for coming out. And I'm always amazed that folks come out to see me and hear me. So I think there's sometimes there's a little doubting there, that even though I'm sure at the time and comfortable in my studio and all that, when it comes to showing work and talking about work, my work, again, so bear with me with all of that. I'm going to start way back when I was a little girl. That was a while ago. I would go along with my parents to Maryland. We lived in Philadelphia, and traveling to another state south was back in the 50s and early 60s was definitely it was a journey. It wasn't like now with the super highways. And so we would, my mother would fry chicken and make potato salad and We would travel through from Philadelphia to through Delaware and into Baltimore and all the way down to what I'll just call right now the country. You know, we go down to the country, which was where my mother grew up. And the country was Seneca Lawn, we're a little town close to the Potomac River. And there were other little towns too, and I'm calling them the towns or settlements that developed actually in the late 1800s. My family members were actually enslaved in the early 1800s. Now, it wasn't before, but I did some genealogy work, and somewhere around 18, I'll just say 65 plus, some 1880s or so, is when I picked up on just research, genealogy research, where I could find individual family members with their own families or attached to a white family. So that when we traveled, and again, I'm going to jump around a little bit, when we traveled by car, we would get to a point where there were just a lot of big farms, which as I was older, those were the plantations, but they were big farms. And there were cows and chickens and gardens with all kinds of vegetables that folks raised. And it was a very nurturing community for me that I visited, more or less every summer. And so as time moved on and I became older, I was aware of photographs that hung in my grandmother's house and on the wall, and they were ancestors. In fact, there's some reproductions of a couple of them there, but these were photographs that were just there for a year after year after year after year as I visited. And I would ask about them and record in my head, stories about living on the farm. My sister and I would follow my father, or my grandfather rather, up to it was a place where hogs were raised, and we learned to put our scraps in I guess you call it like the hog bin. Food for the pigs was something that we learned to do, and that was valuable because the pigs eventually were slaughtered, and that was part of the food that folks prepared in all kinds of ways during the summer for the winter, because they had to survive. And so anyway, I'm just sharing with you a little bit of those visits, and that were so foundational for me. That also included what's called, we call them camp meetings, where different churches would come together and they would have a kind of come together celebration, and family members from all over would come. Again, this is a small community, but you'd have folks coming with, with food in the trunks of the cars, and we would share. And those experiences were just, and still are, so precious to me in that I was a city girl. I grew up in Philadelphia with, concrete, and for a while we were living in housing projects, which were very, contained families that were very supportive of each other, but also not a lot of space that got crammed together, you might say. And so, again, these visits were just really enlightening. One of the an experience that really connects with the installation here and even the photographs is a time that I would just sit and watch my grandmother make what's called yo-yos. And I know you'll note that there are a lot of circles around the walls. But the yo-yos, this is a yo-yo. It's basically a gathered piece of cloth. And my grandmother would this is all by hand, would gather the circles, and eventually, when it seemed there were hundreds of them, she would connect them to create a coverlet. And the coverlet was passed around, and this was a communal effort sometimes. So coverlets were created for particular family members. And just the fact that I remember her making the circles and sitting watching her stuck with me somehow. So that as a young woman, young artist, for some reason, I decided to select this circle, this kind of motif, and create around it, you might say something about it, say something about it in relationship to my ancestors and myself. And thus the circles in part. I won't try to explain more, but it was almost at times maybe a kind of obsession with the circles. But anyway, as time moved on, I found that I continued to not only work with circles, but somehow, and I'm referring now to some of the pieces that are on this wall, but working back in I'll just say the 1970s is when I initially started working with the circle, and then over time, there were other images that came my way, and somehow I just readopted, you might say, the circle again, and so now it's kind of permanent. I'll say permanently a part of my visual vocabulary. I'll put it that way. If I can just shift a little bit to the installation here. I had a lot of questions about the white circle, in particular the white circle, and even the calabash containers. Basically, I was trying to create a presence, you might say, a kind of essence of my grandmother in particular, but generally these really early experiences that were so foundational to me and that helped me know that I came from something. I came from this community, and the community was about this and about that, and there's survivors. So the circle again is outside and there's inside, and I want to create a sense of, looking for the right word, but a sense of a spirit, of something that has to be protected and yet at the same time can be shared. And I expect that people won't put their feet inside the circle, and I don't say don't do that. And so the circle, basically, it probably know that it is used in varying cultures too, but for me, again, it also is a design element, just as a visual element. And then the peanuts kind of suggest they're kind of offering. My grandmother liked candy, peanuts were just one of the snacks that we had often. They weren't, my family members didn't grow them, but they were around. And so I tried to find just these elements that would maybe help her want to be here, maybe help her want to be present. Also, the Bible is really important, and there's if I just jump back a little bit to share that I was christened in a church called St. Paul Methodist Church. I was christened there, when I was a baby. And the Bible somehow, the Methodist Church, just sort of figures, even though I wasn't attending church as a young woman, or I did when my parents were, when I was young, my parents would take me to a church in Philadelphia. But it's just that sense of the church being so foundational, the members of the community, the freed Africans built a church with the help of Quakers in the late 1800s in the area. And so I wanted to be sure to have something there that would kind of be significant of that experience. And so much went on around the church. People came together. Again, this is a farm community, so you had people in the community, but this is again a rural community, a country community, so they're still spread out. Some people had cars, others didn't. So, I keep kind of going back to the church because, again, it's just so opposite of what I experienced in Philadelphia as far as belonging is concerned. If I move to just my grandmother again and watching her sew and make yo-yos by hand, I realized how important the process was, and this is beyond making a functional object or something that could be used, but just as a creative outlet. It was just so important, I think, for her. And that sort of kind of stuck with me, and I say it was so important to her because she seemed so relaxed in comparison to we're just doing the chores, and she's just like always busy, always doing something, And then when I see her on the porch, it was just very opposite, where she was relaxing and creating these, the circles were already cut out, and she's gathering them, or she's putting them together to make a coverlet. And so again, the circle keeps kind of popping up. But it's in relationship to just how comfortable and natural and maybe happy she was. The ancestor photographs, and we kind of moved to some of the photographs here, that they've been reproduced, enlarged, and they're on a polytab of a plastic material. But I do have the originals, and I also have the originals digitized. And I just, I found not these, but some others that have been reproduced here, other family photographs, under my mother's bed in, I think it's around the year 2000. And at the time, she was going to be, she could no longer live by herself. She needed assistance. And so she was leaving her home, and I actually traveled from, where was I living? In Milwaukee. I think I traveled, or maybe Chicago. But I traveled to Philadelphia to just go through the house and take out what we wanted. The house eventually would be sold. And that's where I found these boxes of photographs under her bed. And I brought them back to where I was, and you might say they were not under the bed, but they were on a shelf, so for a while. And at some point, I decided to use them, and actually this is where, just connecting with my printmaking background, every so often I like to be, I call it refreshed. And so being refreshed means finding out what some other artists are doing in another place, maybe in another state, another city, maybe even working with an artist, professional, and that's what I did, and ended up focusing on making prints from, learning how to make prints from plates, from metal plates that were developed in the sun, so they're called solar plates. And the solar plate experience opened up my interest in photographs. That's when I first started incorporating working with photographs in my prints, was after this workshop. And it's persisted in that these aren't the most recent works. There are some other works that just are gone that aren't here. But there's just a kind of reverence for photographs and photography and its importance to my ancestors. And I think I feel it to everybody. I think we should all reproduce ourselves, you might say. We should record ourselves. And there are all kinds of technology now for doing that. But at the time, it was just something so precious about going into the city or going to town, as it was called, and that was going to Washington, D.C., maybe Rockville, which is another city nearby, and sitting and having your photograph taken. And often, I'd like to say maybe most of the time, the photographs were images of the way the folks wanted to be or wanted to be seen or wanted to be presented, because they were working a lot of the time, and they, and here they put on their best clothes, their jewelry, and you see them really dressed up. And so there's just something real significant about being in a position to say, this is the way I want to be seen. This is the way I want you to present me. And considering that those ancestors are gone, they're no longer with us, but the photographs still are. And so I encourage everyone to do that. If there are family photographs, perhaps you can have them digitized. You can do something with them that will preserve them, and maybe make reproductions for people to handle. But interview family members, take notes. I found some notes on the back of some of the photos, maybe a place, a location, or the name of someone. And other times, no, not. It just knew it was a family member, let's say. So just comments. Working with my ancestor photographs, which is like working with my ancestors, has given them, I think, an extended life. That's what I wanted to do. And that's something that I encourage all we do. It's just that, know who you are, know where you come from, and again, have some reproductions, write a book, so that, you sort of continue the history, you might say. So are there any questions? I could probably say more about this, the installation, but are there any comments, anything anybody wants to ask me? Again, I did hop around a bit, so.
You still like the audios?
No, and I never really did. My grandmother did. I just collected. I collected her work. What I made were images inspired by yo-yos, and there were actually some relief images that in the studio, that they're pieces of styrofoam that are actually wrapped with cloth, but they're larger. But I haven't been so interested in actually making the actual yo-yos myself. Yeah.
Did you write a book or keep any notes on how it was to work with your ancestors?
I have notes. I haven't written a book, but I do have notes, and I collect what other people write about just that there is a tradition of creating the yo-yos, and that I just stumbled across. Well, not stumbled. I looked for it online deliberately, and I did that after seeing yo-yo coverlets in, of all places, Jamaica. I mean, it's not surprising now, but at the time it was a visit to a city in Jamaica many years ago, and I saw yo-yo shawls, coverlet-like pieces. And then more recently, around the year, say 2000, I found, I saw yo-yos in El Salvador, in Bahia, in Brazil, when I was visiting. And there was even some yo-yo, a woman had yo-yo earrings who was sitting next to me. And so I would like to do my own, I'll be ambitious at the end, my own maybe articles, my own some writing. And then that could maybe blossom into something else, too.
Did you know the ladies are in pictures?
Oh, no. I have names, but no.
Are they family?
Oh, yes, and they're from that same that same community. But no, in fact, if you look at some of the clothing, you can see that they had transitioned before I was born. You can see by some of the, you look at the, you see what I'm talking about, some of the dress.
Except the lady with the pearls, would that be your mother?
No, actually it's not. Well, it's my cousin's, it's a cousin, it's a cousin's.
You were picture of pearls?
Yeah.
Okay, I took your class with the quilt making. Would that have anything, like here?
Yeah.
Would that have anything with the yo-yos and that quilt making class coincide in any kind of way?
Well, it all connects in terms of my interest. So I was offering, where did I offer exactly? It was
Frank Merriweather, it was a
Yeah.
good time. He taught me all about the symbols and stuff on the quilt. And I said, yo-yo,
oh, okay. And I was using, I was working with photo images too that I would incorporate, family photos.
For Northland?
No, not on North. Well, actually, it was my own photo. Actually, it was a family photo, and the mural that I created. It's my dad. It's across the street from somewhere. I think it's a restaurant over on, yeah. So I was, in fact, actually I'm saying all right, Buffalo AKGs, right? They created these for me, we didn't use them, but they were created during the time of the Northland Mural Project. And then they weren't used, so they went in a drawer, and then later, surely it's like, which is good because they weren't even trimmed. They were just, they were kind of almost like excess imagery that I didn't use. So.
Most people that like me, I do my genealogy and things, I have no pictures of my ancestors up to my grandmother. After that, it stopped. No pictures, so it's wonderful.
What do you
know who they are?
The other thing is, I think, Amy, you can push a little more and see who might have it. Sometimes folks don't want to, which I can understand, they don't want to let go of their photographs or have you take them out of the house. So take your equipment and say, well, can I, even if it's just some snapshots, and if they'll allow you to do that, especially within families, because you can, whatever you have, whatever the quality of what you have, you just work with it, So there was a question. Yes?
I may have missed it, but how old were you when you found the photos of your grandmother's bed? And from that point on, did you become the family memory keeper? Did your family depend on you to carry, all of that knowledge and the history of your family then? Is it just like an organic thing? You're the one now.
No, not exactly, but it was, I said around the year, I'm thinking around the year 2000. This is 2024 now, isn't it? But somewhere around there, it may have been a little earlier. And I just took it upon myself because it's my interest, my interest in, I want the family photographs. I want to be sure that we get everything out of the house, And so that's what I did. But my family members, I have 3 siblings, and they do look at me as the one to keep, you might say, the family kind of photo treasures, as well as some of the writing. And actually, I was the only one who would travel yearly. There was a family reunion, yearly family reunion, and I would travel down to Maryland for that reunion. And the others, I mean, it wasn't that they weren't interested, it just wasn't something that they could do. And so I ended up being, you might say, the keeper. And then I connected with keepers of the family tradition on that end, down in Maryland. So, in fact, one of my, she's now an ancestor, but Gwen Reese was instrumental in setting up what eventually became the Sugar Land Ethno-History Project. And so Sugar Land was the name of the area where the family church was located, where the family cemetery was also located, and the back and side of the church. And that's just through reading about some history that there were sugar maple trees planted all around the area, and that's where the name Sugarland came from. And then the other explanation was that the women were considered as sort of sweet as maple syrup. And so Sugarland stuck. But for those of you who may be familiar with the general area, the town is near a city called Poolsville, and it's also not too far from like Rockville, Maryland, and Gaithersburg, and some of those places, and a little further away from Washington, D.C. But Washington was where my parents met, and Washington even was considered the city, the place where you go when you are, I guess, old enough to date and drive and all that. You go downtown. So, did I answer all of you?
Yeah.
I'm curious about the way you curated the exhibit, specifically with your handwriting, the use of your written, I'm assuming it's yours.
Yes, those are mine.
Yeah, I'm just curious about that choice. It's very powerful and rare.
I missed part of what.
I'm curious about your curation, the choice to use your written hand.
Oh.
Yeah.
I can speak to that.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, something for me, first of all, the penmanship is beautiful. And that was very striking to me from the start. And Phyllis and I have been meeting and talking about this exhibition for about a year. And she always, as you can see, she is the memory keeper, she is the note taker, and she's also left-handed. So I would watch her writing, and it was very, very lovely handwriting. I've been captivated. It's, I think, a generational thing. I can still write in cursive, unlike my youngest child, but it's not lovely like that. So that was part of it. But as Phyllis and I were talking, and much as you're hearing these stories, it was really important to me that it was Phyllis's voice, not an academic voice, not a curatorial voice, but Phyllis's voice that came through in every aspect. So if you read the catalog, it isn't me writing an essay about Phyllis or about her work, it's me asking questions and Phyllis answering them. And then the same thing, when we decided to put some labels on the walls about the work, we felt it was important that those stories come through, but it felt very important to me that it was Phyllis's voice, and the best way to do that on the wall was for it to be Phyllis's handwriting. And as a woman of a certain age, and working with a woman of a certain age, the one thing is it can be big. So that one could be standing at the distance one might be to look at the artwork and still read the labels without having to get very close or bend over or something like that. I wanted it to be very easy to read so that somebody didn't have to, bend over or anything. I wanted it to feel very okay. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I have a follow-up, if that's okay.
Sure.
Will these pieces be sold as well?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah,
It's up to her.
I'm sure.
Your handwriting?
Oh, the handwriting.
Maybe they should.
Well, I haven't put a price on them per se. My thinking is that they facilitate, what.
But they're beautiful.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Yes. Well, thank you. I can make one for you. Free of charge. Seriously, I like writing. Actually, I know people who they're way younger than me, and probably a lot of you too, but they can't write. They can't do it in cursive writing. It's like, just because I guess it's not that valuable anymore, and it was more that when they said they weren't taught, I thought, oh, it's really even more valuable because I really enjoy, I enjoy penmanship and.
I just want to make a comment. I noticed, I'm sorry.
No, but okay, and then you go.
I'm sorry. The woman with the chair, I thought it gave me a picture of my grandfather and my great-grandmother. He was sitting in a chair, and she was sitting just like that. I guess during that time period, they also did the same by the chair.
Yeah, I think too, many of these, maybe I want to say most or all of them, were shot in studios, because folks didn't have individual cameras, and the technology wasn't even close to what it is now, and that was a big deal. I mean, I think the dressing up in your finery, as well as perhaps using a jacket or items that belonged to the photographer. I'm sure the photographer had a whole cadre of items that were used, or props and so on. And yeah, so it's really valuable. But I know that there was a great deal of pride in putting on, having Sunday clothes, and just remembering my experiences in Maryland, in Seneca, in the area, visiting my grandmother. When afterwards, when we come back home, there were always some clothes that weren't clean. We always have some dirty clothes when we would come back to Philadelphia, and the wash would be like red. So it would be like it was the red dirt earth, because we love to make the mud pies and everything. So it was a great pride, and really special. And I'm just absolutely sure that having that, the freedom to say, this is the way I want to be presented, you know, this is the way I want to be, is really, really valuable, you know. So the photos are just special in that sense.
Right.
And then knowing that when they're passed on, you know that your ancestors are really proud of those images. And then there was a question.
Yeah, any of your grandparents or relatives or grandparents' generation lived long enough to see some of these symbols emerge in your artwork and realize that connection, that it's this beautiful testament?
No, with the exception of one. Because the other thing was that I'll just use the term they all, you might say, stay put, you know, because that was the expression used, you know, a great many of the family members that I remember, they said, I'm not setting foot on a plane, you can forget about that. They would maybe do a train, you know, but basically they would travel by car. But that was more or less, or maybe train, you know, but that was more or less it. Yeah. So.
They would travel to the city to see any of your work, is that what you're
Well, you know, I'm saying that, well, it's such a wide period of time between now and when, you know, they were, I don't think probably any of these folks were alive when I was, as an adult, when I was an adult. And in fact, I'm questioning whether they were, I'll just say I was born in the 40s. And, you know, some of these images are, you know, maybe they're around that time or some are before, you know. Yeah, so, but I do have, it was a cousin in particular, and visiting the church every year, I'm sorry, not every year, there was a like a get-together, kind of homecoming every year. Some years I would go down. And then I would meet family members that were closer in my age, you know. They were maybe a little older, but they were, you know, they were still alive, and they could, they carry on the tradition. But, you know, the folks, folks born in, I think my mother was born in the 1920s, so, and she's maybe 23 years or so older than I am. So basically, a great many folks were gone, I guess you could say, by the time I started to really utilize the images in my work. Yeah. Unfortunately. Yes.
Your work is so autobiographical without being about you, and I'm wondering if you've ever used either more contemporary images of your family members or images of yourself. Like, have you ever experimented with that in your own work? It seems like an interesting way to connect yourself back to you.
Yeah, that's a good idea. There are some images of me and my work that I don't show. And but that, thanks for that. You know, even a suggestion that I do more of that. You know, actually using even more images of my immediate family. You know.
You played around the work that you did this summer at Mirabeau.
Yeah, I did.
So you had
my sister and I did. And again, the piece at Northland is my dad. That was, he's comes out of this tradition, you might say, you know, in terms of, he was born, I think, in 1913 or something like that. But I started, let me go back a little bit. I was in New Mexico, which I think of as a state and a city kind of noted for printmaking, and I did a workshop and learned about solar prints, solar, again, how to make these prints in the sun. And I think on the list of what materials to bring, it suggested bring photographs, because I didn't usually work with photographs. And that's what got me started, using photographs in my work. And then actually, selecting family members and so on. But that's a great idea, too.
You have a great eye.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you for sharing your family lineage with all of us and showing that there is a wider diversity to what makes this country we call America.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? I know we need to move on, but there just seem to be so many questions according to Shirley, especially, and a couple other folks, would say, well, what about this? I'm just asking one last time. Anything that you wanted to ask about the...
So is that about your grandmother then? Is that did you say your mom or your grandmother?
My grandmother.
Okay.
So yes, what I tried to do was create a kind of essence of her, to create to invite her energy to come, you might say, and be here. And so in a way that I thought would make sense for me, and without going into a lot of detail, I've been around for a while, and there are different traditions you read about, you hear about, whatever, and sometimes you decide, you make some decisions about what you want to do, and they come from this and that and the other, and you can't pinpoint it and say, or give credit to it. So it's kind of like that, the circle kind of represents unity in a lot of different cultures. It's also, it could be a great design element for drawing attention to something, like what's inside of it. And so, and that's one of the way I've used it. So definitely it's a design element for me to say, oh, this is important and that's important. And maybe I tell you why, but maybe I want you to ask, or I want you to figure out on your own, the way, a lot of us, artists, we don't want to, write down details, this means this and this and that and the other. It's like we want you to interact with the work regardless of what our intentions might have been. So, so the idea is to evoke a kind of essence of her, and then there's the cup, and there's something that you partake of that's energy that helps to keep you alive, and then the support in terms of the Bible, or those words, that inspiration that I could call kind of all worldly and godly too. It's kind of there in that representation, and then the crocheting, making doilies was also a tradition. I learned how to knit and crochet from my mom, but and she again from her mother. And so the sewing was just so prevalent in my family's work and in others. And so I hope that comes through. That essence of maybe a personality, but even though it's my grandmother, I'm hoping that it's going to be an essence of lots of grandmothers and lots of individuals who maybe even here now have come before us too. That you can connect with, or that you'll try to connect with after you finish listening to me. So we'll go home, we'll do some interviewing, and you'll maybe look at the photos that you happen to have, or you'll put your document while you're still here and can do that because you have some info in your head that nobody else has.
Now, if I heard you correctly earlier, the white circle around had a protective function for her as well, right?
Yeah.
I thought that was real sweet.
Yeah, and it keeps you
inviting her in, but shielding her.
Right, it was kind of like, don't put your foot over there. Yeah. And yeah, I think it pulls you in, doesn't it? Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's any part of it why that glass of water is under the chair.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, water is, for me anyway, it's symbolic for life, and energy. And so I put it there as an indication of life force, even though this entity is obviously not with us now, but the water is essential to all of us being
Those
here.
two pieces to your grandmothers?
Pardon?
Are those two, the chair and table, your grandmothers?
Not so literally this pieces, but the table is something that I think my ex-husband, we used to collect old things and rewrote them. And so, but it makes sense, it fits in, and I happen to have it, and so I use it. Other comments?
Thank you for producing beautiful water.
Well, thank you.
And thank you all for coming. We're going to now, as I said before, our team of, and I'm going to just introduce the team real quick as we're finishing up because the whole team is here today. We have Emma Correa, our Executive Director, Lauren McLaughlin, who's our information technology superstar, rockstar, longest title ever, Sydney Oshai, who is our special events coordinator, and then Jane Hughes, who is our education director. So again, thank you all. Lauren's going to zip up and turn off the phone. Go ahead.
Just one little thing I want to
Yeah,
say.
go ahead.
I wrote a book that is about the Sugar Land Forest community, and I have it here. But if one's interested in that, the history of the community, then this can be purchased on Amazon. And it's actually I had started for Canon, but it's the story of the African American town of Sugar Land. So.
And the exhibition does end this afternoon, but we've done our best to plan ahead that much of the work will be obviously in Phyllis' studio. She does have a studio here with us. She's one of our 30 studio artists. Because I think this has been so impactful, I think many people want to continue these conversations. So, in fact, I'm not going to open her studio right now because it's sort of pulled apart in preparation of moving things and hanging things on the wall. Because this is such a living story. So if you were intrigued by this, you want to bring someone back, or you want to continue this conversation, just because we're done today, and the exhibition is going to come down early next week, you can continue those conversations, obviously still today, but also with Phyllis in her studio here at Buffalo Art Studios. So thank you all very much. Phyllis is working